All right. Well, thank you for joining. I'm sure we're going to have a few more participants here shortly. Since I started with my little story about my dog, I'm going to use it today actually in my my little training. So, we actually have a fenced yard, right? But my dog technically still a pup. He's 8 months old, and even though our yard is fenced, I had like drip systems in and plants, and he's demolished the backyard, right? Why? Because he didn't have boundaries.
What kind is he?
He is half mini golden doodle, half mini bernedoodle. And
Oh,
apparently he did not get the message about the mini part because he's 45 pounds.
oh, cute.
Yeah. And his name's Harley, as you might imagine.
Of course, that's awesome.
Of course. But he really is a loving dog and whatnot. But for the purpose of our little training here today, I mean, I have nice planters, and I've got miniature Japanese maples and Rose of Sharon and all these wonderful plants in there, and they were all on a great drip system. I mean, it was low maintenance, and he destroyed it all. So that's why I went out and bought the shock collar and the wired boundary fencing system within the fence, so that he stays out of my planters.
Oh.
But as I was thinking about training today, I'm like, that's kind of how I view the division of real estate. We're all within a fenced environment. We should all know how to do this, right? But apparently there's some additional constraints we need to do, or it's going to destroy things for us. And so with that said, I'm going to jump into I'm going to put this up on my screen here, just a second. Share screen, maybe it cooperates with me. There we go. Okay, so last week we covered this area that's in yellow, right, which was the definitions of double contracts and not to do them. So we are starting with, I'm going to go through rules H through K today, and we'll hit these pretty fast. Stockton, Carrie, somebody give me the definition of a net listing.
Where your commission is based off of where you sell it at. So if you sell it at 400,000 and you net like 50,000 for the seller, then your commission is based on how much you net for the seller.
Right. So let me restate that. So if I'm your seller and I say, hey, Stockton, I don't care how much you sell this for. I need 350, and you turn around and sell it for 400. That means your net, the net from it, right, above his number of 350 is your commissions. The DRE says nope, and here's in my opinion why they say that. Because then potentially you list it high and it doesn't get sold, or the division of real estate is very specific about making sure the public's protected, and part of the public being protected is knowing what they're going to be charged. And by doing a net listing, amongst other reasons why not to do them, it's a sliding scale, and it doesn't typically work out best for our clients or for the public. So that's why they say no to net listings. So don't need to spend a ton of time on that one, because most of us don't do that because the public generally doesn't want those. Item J, shall not sell listed properties other than through the listing broker. Now, I want to make sure I make a clarification on this. This is not to say that you can't sell your own properties that you own without going through the brokerage. You're still a private citizen. You can still sell your own, because I get these questions from agents. I have to sell it through the broker. Well, we would prefer you do, because there's a lot of advantages to doing that, but you're not actually required to. What they're talking about in this rule is you're not going to sell somebody else's property as a licensee except through your brokerage. And that hopefully makes sense to everybody, because that is the administration model from the DRE, right? They manage the brokers manage the agents. All right. Question? Hey, Robert joined. Good morning, Robert. subject to principal to paying a double commission without the principal's informed consent. What does that look like? I mean, on its surface, it sounds kind of crazy, right? Why would anybody pay a double commission? So what would that look like in our world where we'd be subjecting them to a double commission?
Hmm.
Yeah, right. Makes you think a little bit.
Mhm.
Robert, you want to weigh in on that one?
You could just do it accidentally. Um,
I'm sorry, I accidentally charged you twice. Okay, fair.
yeah,
Can you imagine if I was representing a builder, right? And I have brokerage fee of, let's just say 5.5%, 6%, right? And then I turn around and I have a buyer and I say, here's your buyer broker, and you're going to pay me 3% if I secure a deal, right? Is there any problem with that? I mean, is that making them pay double?
Yes.
You're definitely getting into that realm. I think another reason for this is they don't, everything that you get outside of their signed agreement needs to be disclosed. If you're being paid more than what is in your disclosed agreement, it's got to be disclosed. And that's what this is getting at. The consumer, whether that's the seller or the buyer, has the right to know what is being paid and to whom. And it should not be hidden from the other so that you're not being paid twice, right? So ostensibly, the seller said, yeah, I'm going to pay you brokerage fee of 6%. And oh, by the way, you're going to offer out 3% by way of a BAC. And then you also charge the buyer 3% in addition to the 3% you're being paid. That's going to be generally frowned upon by the Division of Real Estate, right? Okay, here's the one I wanted to get to the most. And this one is because I run across this all the time. And I want you to pay particular attention to the verbiage here because it's really powerful language against the licensee if they run afoul of this. It says this: enter or attempt to enter. Notice it didn't enter or attempt to enter into a concurrent agency representation when the licensee knows or should know that the principal has an existing agency representation agreement with another licensee. Get this all the time. Honestly, I could spend the next hour reciting to you things that I've run across over the years, you know, from somebody going up and knocking on a door where somebody already has a sign and then trying to talk. This is blatant, right? Has a sign for one brokerage and goes up and tries to get them to list with you. That's blatant, right? But a lot of times where we see this rule run afoul is when a buyer comes to you. Carrie, a buyer comes to you and says, oh, Carrie, I'm so frustrated. I've been working with this agent and I just don't like them. They're never responsive. In fact, I haven't even heard from them in 3 months, right? Can you help me? You're a good friend, Carrie. Would you help me? And Carrie, you being the nice person, turns around and says, sure, be happy to help you.
Of course. Of course.
Of course, because you're a helper. And in our mind, we're like, well, clearly, this is the way the rationalization takes place. Clearly, the agent that had been representing them has walked away because they haven't talked to him in 3 months. So I'm just going to go ahead and sign up. What happens next? You find them a property, you go under contract. Then what happens, Robert?
and you get a call from another broker that said they want their fee.
You got it. And you're like, what are you talking about? And then we get into these discussions. I have these all the time with agents, and it's like, well, they abandoned their client. That's not your call. You know, the division doesn't say in this rule, hey, if you think in all of your wisdom that they've been abandoned, the first question they're going to ask you is, did you ask them if they've ever signed an agreement? And you'd be like, well, crap, they said they hadn't been represented for 3 months, so no. Well, you're in jeopardy. You violated the rule, and it's going to go against you, right? And then it takes it a step further where it says, and should know. So let's just continue with that example. if they say they have been working with an agent, forget all the excuses that come after that, right? The division looks at that and says, you know, or you should have known. And part of that is, did you do anything to find out? Did you call the other agent? Did you call their broker? Did you see if there's a signed agreement in place? The responsibility is on the second agent, just to be 100% clear, right? So unless you enjoy the exercise of working for free for several months and pre-spending your commission check only to find out it went to another person who had a signed agreement or was procuring cause or both, then don't do this. Make sure you make that additional call. Make sense?
Yes, I just had this exact situation. You just have to keep asking questions till you find out what's really going on.
You know what? And
If
thank
you're
you.
into it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because a lot of times it just falls in the category of, well, I'm not the police. I'm not. Well, the division doesn't say you're the police either, but there is a bare minimum that we must do. So I don't care how good of a friend they are, how bad their story is, of how terrible it is. Our first question should be, have you signed an agreement with this broker, with this agent, right?
Yes.
And then I would say take it a step further, which is if they say, well, not really, because you'll get answers like that, right? You'll get a hedge because people don't want to flat out lie to you. So they kind of munge it a little. And they said, well, not really. And you're like, help me understand, not really, right? I'm not trying to be the Spanish Inquisition here, but I need to add no more detail because I have these rules that I'm obligated as a licensee to follow. And if you already have a signed agreement, then it creates a problem for my license, and I'm not willing to do that. So tell me what you have exactly signed and when.
And when does it expire?
And when does it expire? And hopefully you, at a minimum, you get a name of the agent, the broker, the brokerage, or something. And your next step should be to call that agent, broker, or brokerage and be like, I've been contacted by Bob Jones. He says he no longer has an agreement with you. I want to confirm that. And here's the third step. If you had, let's say you talk to the agent, like, yeah, guy's a pain in the butt, and I don't want to work with him anymore. That's not a green light, just for the record. You need to get something in a paper trail. So if I'm the dutiful agent Carrie, I'd be like, oh, thank you for sharing that, Bob. I'm just going to send over a quick email kind of recapping our conversation. If you could just reply back saying that you guys no longer have an agreement, that'd be fantastic. Right? Now you're in you're in the clear. Even if they had an agreement, the fact that they affirmatively said they don't means that they have abandoned. Right? And now you're in the clear. Your license is good. You're going to get paid.
I think agents get caught here because they're always trying to slide into something.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, if I were to have a tick sheet of all the issues that I have addressed as a principal broker in 17 years, I would dare say this is number one. It's number one by far. And you won't believe the excuses I get. It's almost comical. So, all right, that was just our warm up for this morning. I wanted to quickly get to the things that hopefully matter a little bit more to you guys. So the MLS announced last week, I'm going to pull this over to my screen here. And they announced this product called Rapid Stats. Have any of you taken a look at it on the MLS? Okay. So ridiculous. 3 years ago, when I was still on the MLS board of directors, I was on for almost 10 years. I said, guys, we have the data and we have this stupid stat system that doesn't really give us good data. And it takes 3 months for us to get refreshes. That's horrible, right? So this just came out last week. I had actually been beta testing this for the MLS. It's so good, you guys. I can't even come close to going through all of its capacities, on a call of this length. So I'm just going to highlight 2 or 3, and then I want to get to the last thing, which is price per square foot that I wanted to cover today. So when you go to the MLS, on the left-hand side, you have all of the affiliate products that we get as a part of our subscription to the MLS, right? Whether it's Cloud CMA or align showings. This is another entry there. So if you just click on it, it just says, hey, great, we're taking you to Rapid Stats. You don't even have to log in. And this is your dashboard, right? You're going to come here. Just gives you some cursory level information in the aggregate. But what I want to spend a little time on today is the market summary. Now look at this. Generally speaking, they have this broken up into residential and rental. And guys, this stuff is accurate as of midnight last night. This isn't once a month update, not once every 3 months, not once a week. It's updated daily. And they break it down into residential and rental, which can be helpful with your first-time home buyers. But I want to jump into this one first, which is the market statistics summary. I already have it pulled up. Oops, I thought I had it pulled up. Here we go. I'll just pull this up this way. Here we go. All right. Notice you have filters that you can put on at the top. And I'm just going to restrict this to Salt Lake County. So I deselect all, scroll down, Salt Lake County, refresh the report. And I've got data accurate on Salt Lake County as of midnight last night. And look at this. I mean, tons of data like that. Active listings, 1,541, under contract, 1,347, sold listings, 937, new listings, 1,239, average days on market. Aren't these things that we deal with all the time and would be useful to have up-to-date information? And then you notice these arrows down below, and basically what it's telling you, this number, so 1,541 is, compared to the 1 month previous. That's what this first one is, okay? And then what that number is compared to the last 3 months previous, and 6 months, and 12 months. That is pretty fast, succinct data. And now remember, I can go up here and I can restrict this to a city. I could say, you know what, all I want is Cottonwood Heights, right? And I could further say, I only want single family, and I only want a certain price range, right? And I only want those 500,000 and above. And refresh my data. There it is. I mean, I know you're all muted, but I would appreciate one little ooh ah from each of you. Nobody, crickets. Wow.
I will. I love statistics. I love data. I love to have that on the tip of my tongue when I talk to somebody that asks me how the market's going. In fact, I was going to ask you that as you do these broker minutes to do statistics, and because I really miss it when you don't, because I love them.
Okay. Well, now I have like a plethora of things to choose from. And here's my advice to you is don't get overwhelmed, because remember, this is only the market summary tab with the 5 or 6 reports in there. There's new listings, current listings, sold listings, supply and demand, agent, broker metrics. I mean, the list goes on and on. You can really get lost in here really fast. So I'm gonna tell you a quick anecdotal story. My wife, if she was here, she's an agent. She would be the first to admit or agree to what I say. She's not exactly a technologist. And Saturday, I'm working this past weekend, I'm working in the yard, and she comes out and says, have you seen this new program on the MLS called Rapid Stats? I'm like, well, yes, I've been beta testing it. She said, this is ridiculous. It is so good and so fast. So that's coming from your self-professed non-technologist, and not even telling her to go look at it. She found it on her own and was like, this is going to help me. So she sells a higher end project in Woodland Hills down in Utah County, you know, 1 to 5 million type properties. And they're always wanting analytics. She's like, oh my gosh, I have it at my fingertips now. This is fantastic. So anyway, good stuff. So this is, again, this is your market summary. And once you just learn the basics of this, you know, the 5 key data points, which are in blue, and then what the arrows mean, you know, 1, 3, 6, and 12 months, the change, pretty cool data. But if you have somebody that's kind of fearful of so much data, they take this same data and put it in an infographic, you know, pretty it up, dumb it down, whatever you want to call it. Right. So it's just graphically driven. It's the same data. it's just a different look to the same data, right? Key things: active listings, sold listings, median price per square foot, months of supply, and median days on market.
Matt, what did you click on to get that?
Oh, sorry. Good. Let me show you that. So I went to market summary. The first one I showed you was this one, the market statistics summary. The second one is the infographic. So if I click on that, look at that. That's a marketing piece ready to go, you guys. Can you imagine just if you put a calendar item once a month, I need to send the market statistics graphic out to my SOI. Would that be useful? I mean, the whole point is to get them to call you, with some questions and have a real estate conversation. You're giving them data that a lot of people want to know. They want to know what's going on in the market. And then you're the conduit for further discussion. And guess what? This program will give you as much data as you want to fill in the gaps for the people that call you. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you this one. This is the monthly metrics. So again, to your point, Carrie, if I go to market summary, right? And right here, monthly metrics, the fourth button, okay? It generates this. Look at this. This looks like, and it is, and oh, by the way, yes, it is the same company that UAR uses that gives us our monthly update. It's now daily. All of the individual things. So, right, you have new listings, you have pending sales, closed sales, days on market. I mean, I'm like in statistics nirvana here. It's actually really, really cool that we have this data now. And I just wanted to show you, if you're in a report, let me go to the top here, and you say, you know what, I want to go ahead and print my report. I already printed it. It's out to a PDF. If you tag that you want the cover sheet, it does this nice little cover sheet. It tells you what filters you have. In this particular report, I didn't have any filters, and assumptions that were made. And then it comes down and breaks down all the information. And oh, by the way, if you check that you want the definitions, it will print this last page. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that for your clients, but for your, however you carry this information electronically on your phone, or if you actually have a printout that you keep in a folder as you go and meet with people, be great to have this page printed at the end. This is such good data, you guys. I can't even tell you how excited I am. I know that data is not the end all be all, but again, in talking with my wife Saturday, I said, honey, you realize I use you as an example in all the classes that I teach on data and statistics. She says, really, how's that? I said, you're the quintessential amiable. Somebody who allegedly is so averse to numbers and stats and data. And I say in my trainings, and I use that definition of my wife, I said, even she wants some data to back things up. She's like, oh my gosh, that is really true. So, don't give yourself a pass and say, well, not everybody's into stats. Not everybody's into stats like I am, that's for sure. But everybody wants a little bit of data to back up their thinking. What do we tell clients all the time? You're typically going to buy a house on emotion first, or put it under contract on emotion first, and then you're going to backfill with data and logic. That's usually the sequence. So it's not that it's non-existent. It has an important place. It may not be the first thing you do, but trust me, people want to have some data. I don't care if they're amiable or not. So, all right, this is going to segue to our last thing here. I'm going to show you how I got here, Carrie. So if you go to the dashboard, right? And here's another cool thing, right? If I say, go to my charts, and it's like, well, you don't have any. So great, I want to create one. And I come here and I say, yeah, I'm going to do residential, oops, cancel, create a new chart. I don't want a residential listing. Why is it? I have a better idea. Why don't I go here and I'll back up? You can see, create a new chart. Well, hell's bells, Mary Ellen. I think because of the filters I have, I went in and just said, I want you to show me on residential on closed homes what the average price per square foot was. And it generated this graph like that fast. So kind of cool data to show, you know, a buyer. I think this is a great one for a buyer in particular, right? Like, oh man, aren't you glad that it is not May of 2022, that we're a year later, because your price per square foot was 274 and we're now at 251. We actually bottomed out. If you had been smart and bought back in, you know, January, February, it would have been 240, but now more people are engaged and it's going to probably go up through July. But at least you're 251 a square foot, right? You can tell people the data all along, all day long, but if you actually show them, this is what they see. Oh my gosh, look at how far it's come down. Is that a good message for a buyer? Yeah, it's a good offset against the current rates. Oh, and by the way, rates are coming down too, so it's a win-win, right? It's a compounding factor. All right, so that was all a setup for, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I want to. Carrie, are you presentable for your video?
Oh, I just got back from exercising, so no.
I don't believe you. I think we need to see.
No, you don't.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen here for a minute. Price per square foot. What are your thoughts on that? Good, bad, indifferent, don't care? Is it a good metric, Dan?
It's a good metric if you're using like for like. So the challenge is really finding that like for like.
Uh-huh.
Even within the same neighborhoods, like if you have one home that's small and one home that's big, it's no longer a good metric. But if you have roughly similar square footages with roughly similar models, if not the same model, then it is a good barometer.
Okay, so I'm going to use your example, and I like the start off point, and I think you're right to a degree, but I'm going to point out some flaws. So let's say we are in a, who's a good cookie cutter builder that I can completely lambast on my call?
Should we choose ones that have good foundations or no? Like Edge out of the picture?
All right, we're going to use Edge, and we all know that Edge builds a good product, and they got a screwy deal in Draper, but you know, they don't build custom homes, right? They have a good suite of products, but let's just say for theory's purpose that they went into this relatively flat area. Let's say it's well, think of anywhere flat in your current area, and they bought, you know, 50 acres, and they built the same model on each one of the lots, and they're all the same lot size. Price per square foot a good metric?
Yeah.
Didn't ask enough questions. Here's why. Dan, you know this is a former appraiser. If my property backs up to high power lines, what does that do to my value?
Theoretically, it should tank it.
It should take a hit of 5 to 10%, right? What if I back up to a railroad? Same. What if my house is on a street that has a double yellow line? Same. You see where I'm going with this?
What if they have all three?
What if they have all three? So I only say this not to be argumentative, but this is what we deal with. I have on my notes here, it's a crap measurement. I've said that for years. But the second bullet point is it's also a reality, right? The public uses it. We have it on our MLS. We have it in infographics. And I guess why I bring this up is to make sure that we're intelligent enough. Don't come out of the gate like I want to do and be like, it's a crap measurement, right? Because you're just going to offend somebody. But instead you say something like, oh, Dan, bless your heart. I remember when I was naive. No, some version of that, like, hey, you know what? A lot of people use price per square foot. And you know what? It's not a bad ballpark measurement. Can I point out a few things that we should consider in addition to our price per square foot, right? And then I'm going to introduce those things. Acreage. Now, in our theory, everybody had the same size lot. I could have the same size or the same model home on a 1/4 acre and the other one's on a 1/2. Does that get accounted for in price per square foot? It sure does not. So acreage is one we need to consider. Well, what about if the basement's finished versus one that's not finished on the same exact map model on a quarter acre? Is that a concern to value? It sure is. What if one has a pool? Now, some people in the state of Utah would argue that the pool's a downer because you got to heat it and it's a cost, but generally speaking, it's an asset. What if there's solar on the roof? Is that considered in price per square foot? Yeah. What if it's a view lot? I already brought up the high-powered lines, double yellow streets, train tracks. What if one was built 5 years previous? It's the same model. Does that affect value? You get where I'm going with this, right? I don't want to advocate that we do away with price per square foot. One, because it would be futile, because people are still going to use it. I just want to make sure that we're aware of the surrounding issues, right? Carrie, did you have something to say?
No, I just was sneezing.
Oh,
Allergies in the air.
Dan, go ahead.
I got something to say. So, I mean, back to the first thing out of my mouth is like, as long as you're comparing like for like, right?
Yes.
And so you do have to put on your, your professional hat and figure out what is different about the two homes. And so if there are differences, you have to account for differences. So the reason why I was late to this call, apologies, Matt, but I was helping Janelle with a CMA in the Harvard-Yale area right by the University of Utah, right? And like, if you guys know that area, that has tons of homes with varying ranges of construction in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and like price per foot there is just like there's no way
It's all over the map.
All over the map. It's a crazy number. It's like 370 was the low and 450 was the high per foot, right? And like you really have to drill down. And I did a CMA, like one of the dumb CMAs on the MLS. The MLS allows you to do, and I say it's a dumb CMA because it doesn't allow you to massage the numbers like you should, because there are lots and lots of differences, right? And one thing I said to Janelle is like, this CMA right here, it spit out a number of 1166, $1,166,000, but it's like ours doesn't have a garage, and all of the homes we were comparing ourselves to had at least a one-car garage, right? Ours was on a corner lot. None of the other homes that we felt were like, comparable were on corner lots. And so like, while ours is really nice and updated and, like basically new on the inside, and we're only choosing those that are similar to that, like they also don't have the characteristics of corner lot, which compromises a backyard with those small lots up there, right? And then they also don't have a garage.
I want you to speak to that corner lot, because I think this is lost on a lot of people. Some people are like, oh, a corner lot's wonderful because I have one less neighbor. But what was the downside you just articulated?
Yeah, so depending on the lot size, it really can compromise the usability of a yard, right? Because you have
quarter acre lot.
What's quarter acre lot?
Quarter acre lot.
That depends on how big the home is, right? So you have two setbacks. You have the setback from the front. You have to be so far from whatever you deem the front of the house to be, and then you also have to be so far from the street, from the side street, right? And so your home, if you have the little square here, right, and if this is where the corner is, it's pushed back kind of into the corner, right? And so compromised both the side yard and the backyard. In this particular house, like it basically didn't have a backyard. And so what they did is they took a fence and ran it. And so their side kind of front yard is now their backyard. And so it's weird, right? And so like, and that is hard to account for, but it's something that you have to account for.
Yeah, if you're, I mean, listen, the vast majority of people want to have some backyard space. I think that's a foregone conclusion, right? And so you have a quarter acre corner lot and a quarter acre interior lot. I mean, most cities, you have a 25-foot setback to the front of the house from the curb, right? So that usually means you can have somewhere in a 30 to 40 foot backyard. But because of what Dan just said, since you have the 25-foot setback from the front and from the side, they actually have a triangulation measurement so that what they really want is line of sight. So when somebody is coming to that corner, they can see around the corner and don't create an accident. And what that does is it typically pushes the house back somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12 feet, right? From what it would normally would be on the interior. And so your backyard that was 35 feet is now 24 feet, which isn't a lot, pun intended, sorry.
Heyo.
Yeah, hey-o.
No, but that's right. And so accounting for those is challenging, right? And like, you know, the comment I made to Janelle is like, there's, you know, an appraiser would put this in their hopper and they spit out all their adjustments and they would say, oh, the house is worth 1.1 million. And
Right.
and I'm saying like, it might be, but it also might not be because buyers buy differently. And so
this is getting to the pragmatic portion of this for the last few minutes, which is, okay, so now we know the issue. We start out, we know how to get some stats and data. We now have an issue with price per square foot. We know it's not going to go away, that people are going to use it. Might be our own client, might be the client on the other side through their agent. My question is, how do we navigate that? I mean, the title of this call is Contracts and Negotiations. Right? If they come at us and say, well, everything else, like, they're not going to say like for like, but everything else in the neighborhood or everything else like this house is selling for $300 a square foot. And you know, it's got some glaring issues. I don't care what they are. Let's power lines. Yeah, you're right along your back fence line. There are high power lines. So what would be our tactic? What's some good verbiage to address that with the other side? I'm going to be the idiot listing agent who says everything around here has been selling for $300 a square foot. So that's how we based our pricing. How do you, not just in an ornery way, but how do you successfully, meaning protecting the relationship, how do you navigate that with me? And I won't be obstinate. I'll just try and be as normal as possible. Anybody, take a stab at it. Carrie. Okay, Carrie's tuned out apparently. Robert, take a swing at it.
Well, I think you just basically say, you know, look, friend, you know, not all houses are built the same. There's varying conditions, styles, and material finishes. And then I would just, when I do it, I also look at the interior photographs. A lot of
Okay,
people.
but my issue is the power lines. Let's stick with power lines.
Okay. Well, I'd say with the power lines, I'd just say, you know, that's perception, you know, and a lot of people perceive that those are harmful, and you know, that's basically their perception.
So I'm going to give you one with this, right? You'll find a lot of cities when they have power lines. Dan, this is actually down by your builder's project in Mapleton. Got the power lines coming through, right?
Yep.
To between Arrive's development and Salisbury's development, and you guys are to the south.
Yeah.
But they have power lines that are coming through there, and you know, Mapleton's smart. They actually decided to build a park there, right? Because it's why? Because they can get the land cheap, because nobody can do anything with it, right? Because nobody's going to put stuff right under power lines, right? And so they're putting pickleball courts and dog park and all these other things. So I'm the smart agent on the other side. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I get it, Robert. There's a trade-off here, but you know, the good news is you don't have any backyard neighbors, and they're putting in a dog park and pickleball courts and everything. Isn't that wonderful?
Not really.
Yeah, no, it's not wonderful.
Really, if your hair's, you know, standing straight up because of the buzz of the power line. So
Remember this, whether it's the other client or when it's their agent, people always want to be heard first, right? So good negotiating stuff is to be like, hey, I totally understand where you're coming from, right? That means I heard you, right? And I can even understand, and then try and not make it about them. I can even understand why your clients may think that that's not a big deal. Can I just share with you, not only where my client's coming from, but what I found with other buyers in the past. And oh, by the way, here's an interesting one. If you have or have not had this experience, back in the downturn, I did a ton of BPOs, right? Broker price opinions, appraisal lights, and we would get guidelines from these companies saying, if it's within 100 feet of, and they had a list, we were supposed to ding the property a minimum of 5%. You know what one of those things were, Robert? Power lines, right? So whether it has the advantage of a park under it or not, the general perception by people, market, valuation models is that it's not a net positive. It's a little bit of a net negative. Now, listen, I don't want to offend your clients. Please don't go and tell them we think their property's crap or anything like that. But maybe you could help me in explaining to them that there are some valuation considerations. We'd still love to do the deal on the house, but not at the current price. So I think you might be able to get some traction on that, right? I didn't come out and tell him he's a jackhole. I told him that I heard what he had to say and that there is some value. I'm not even arguing the value with him or his perception or his client's perception of the value. I just countered with, yeah, well, a lot of people see it differently, and I think you're outnumbered. You know what I mean? This is the part, I don't know if we spend enough time on this call, is it's great to have the knowledge. It's great to have stats to back things up, but none of that matters. None of that matters unless you can communicate it effectively. And I'm just here to tell you, as much as it pains me to say this, because my natural habitat is just to tell people the way it is and let the chips fall where they may. But if somebody's hired me to be successful in getting a deal done for them, then I've got to table my personality to a degree and use the appropriate tactics, strategies to successfully navigate dicey things. Dan, you turned me on to a book a little while ago, Never Split the Difference, right? It's a catchy title. I like it because it's a good hook. It's like, we're never going to split the difference. Well, that's actually not the message of the book, right? This guy's a former FBI negotiator, hostage negotiator, and has morphed into even the business world. And I like, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but one of the overarching themes with this, he talks just even in our tone, he calls it his FM voice, right? When we're talking about something, if I get shrill, if you told me, Robert, that the valuation's there and I respond back like this and I'm raising up my voice, that just naturally makes things anxious. If I can slow my pace, if I can seem, notice I said seem cerebral, talk smoothly, make the eye contact, make it personal. I mean, I know some of these things sound stupid, but they're legit, right? And then rather than make a statement like, yeah, well, tough crap, the value's not there, right? I could turn it around and say, well, how's this supposed to look, right? If, you know, there's a couple phrases he says, tell me what this looks like, right? Not steer clear of certain phrases. How can we make this work, right? Given the fact that my client's perception and appraisers and valuation models appraise that as a net negative. How do we make this? How do you see this working? Right? I mean, I'm saying no to his current pricing. I'm just not saying it in an obnoxious way where he has to dig in his heels to protect his pride. Right? Anything you want to add to that, Dan, from that book?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, never split the difference it's not never split the difference. It's sometimes there are things that you can't split. Like his in the hostage negotiation, you can't split the child and like, oh, we'll take half the child and you take the other half, right? Like that's not where we're able to split. But you know, what can you negotiate on? And so that's one of the things I think they do a really good job of with this book is like, you know, going into a negotiation, figure out what are the pressure points that they can be amenable to, and if it's not price, is a term that can be helpful. You know, specifically to this, you know, tactic and argument, like, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, just trying to ask the questions to see what the other side has included and why they are, anchored, right? That's the term in the book, why they're anchored to a certain price and why they think their home is worth that much.
You just hit a key word. And it's one he said to stay clear of in your negotiations. Don't go the why route. It almost always blows up on you, right? Because they're going to make a statement. And at that point, now you have to argue their statement, right? So why is a bad one? How and what are the two that he focuses on a ton? So how are we going to make this work, right? How do we get past X, right? And what you're doing is you're trying to get them to now, it's so subtle, but it's actually genius, because you've now, by asking the how or the what question, you've now put them into the solution mindset, because you're asking them to come up with the plan of how we're going to navigate this. Not, why are your people so entrenched? You know what I mean? That's getting you nowhere. You just get them to dig in more.
So a question he might ask based on this scenario is like, considering the electrical, poles in the backyard, how did you arrive at your value, right?
Sure.
And so like you might anchor, to the electrical poles and saying, hey, this is a problem. How did you overcome this? And see what they say. And I think a lot of question asking is what he does.
Oh, I love it. Right. And I would turn around to you if you were on the other side, Dan, and be like, Dan, clearly you and I understand it's a good property. Your people don't see the issue with the power lines. Mine do see the issue. How can we navigate that? I mean, that's simple, right? I haven't even said, let's do a price reduction, which may be what my people want. Just by asking the question, he may turn around and say, because he's had conversations with him, they may have green lighted him. We've been on the market too long. I'm willing to take a $10,000 hit, right? It's kind of like my favorite situation in real estate is when somebody, you can see on the MLS, right, when their listing date was, and you're miraculously 1 week from the 6-month mark, which we all know is probably the end of their listing. And I called Dan up and be like, hey, Dan, tell me what we would need to do to get a deal done. And now that he's at the end of his listing and he's watching $15,000, $20,000 walk out the door, he's all of a sudden going to be he's going to forget his fiduciary of confidentiality and tell me everything I need to do, from the price point to the timing to everything. So it's kind of in that category. When we ask them the how or the what, you're giving them the opportunity to just share with you things that are collaborative versus being entrenched. So I hope you guys, I would recommend that book. I enjoyed it, Dan. I listened to it on Audible. It's fantastic. It's there's a couple of staples that have been negotiation books, Getting to Yes and The Power of a Positive No, and basically the premise is made that even those books missed a few things. Those were written 25, 30 years ago. They have been used at Harvard Business School, but this is kind of like the updated thinking of approaching negotiations. So yeah, it's a great book. I would highly recommend it.
Can I offer a thought?
Yeah.
Over the years, I have appreciated so much an agent on the other side that is willing to check his ego at the door and just negotiate, just work with me. How can we solve this problem? There's been certain times when I've had an agent on the other side where they're just posturing and their client is right, and he's causing so many problems himself in the transaction. You can just feel that his ego is so engaged. He's non-workable. I don't even know that his client has issues. It's really him that has the issue.
Happens all the time. Yep.
Yeah, so hard to work with that sort of an agent. So I just think it's important that we check our ego at the door. We be workable, negotiable, that somebody feels like they can talk to us easily, so that
I'm going to encourage you, Carrie, to be proactive with that, right? A lot of times we say, well, on my side, I'm going to be agreeable and not full of ego, and that's good, right? But when you get the first hint of somebody like that, I have found, it's just been my experience, that if you kind of address that by saying, hey, Carrie, I appreciate, how good of an agent you are. That may be painful for me to say if I don't generally like the person. Like, I think you, like me, we're professionals. We want to get the job done for our clients. I'm building commonality at that point, right? Said, but you know, the good news is, and I love working with people like you, right? But what I'm doing is I'm setting them up, right? I love working with people like you because you're very knowledgeable. Now they don't have to prove all these things to me, that they're a good agent, that they're knowledgeable, they're looking out for their client's interest, right? I mean, I'm just forfeiting those things up front. And at the end of that is my call to action for them. So I love working with people like you, Carrie, because typically I have found, since we're the same, we can get the job done, right? So please feel free to communicate with me. I will do the same with you. Let's see how good we are at solving problems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
now I've wiped out the ego, I've wiped out all this excuses, I've wiped out the pounding of the chest. For the most part, there's always going to be an anomaly to this, but you know, and then I've set the expectation that, hey, we're going to work through problems, right? And we're going to do it through good communication. It's still going to be painful. I don't, you know, this isn't like some silver bullet where all of a sudden, you know, you flip a switch and everything's magical, but I've wiped out a lot of the problems by doing that. Whether they initiated that doesn't matter. The fact that they didn't argue with me on it means they're buying into that to a certain degree. And so then there's an expectation both on my part and on their part that they're going to behave a little bit better. So,
Right. Very good. And I just think we have to be careful not to be that agent.
oh my gosh. Yeah. We've all worked with them, right? They're annoying as all get out. It's just like, oh man, I can hardly wait for the division to light you up. That's kind of my thought, but anyway. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Remember, price per square foot is crap, but it is still used.
That's a good YouTube title. Price per square foot is crap. Because
Yeah, yeah.
It's, arguing from the extreme, because it's
Yeah.
not, but you're right.
Well, you know what? The great news is if they bring up price per square foot, it's so easy to be like, oh my gosh, everybody uses that one, but a lot of people don't realize that it really has some deficiencies. Here are some metrics that are even better, right? What's somebody going to say to that? No, I want to stick with my crappy measurement as you just described it.
Totally. That's right.
So, all right, guys, appreciate you being on the call. Have a great Monday, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thanks, Matt.
All right, see ya.
Bye, Matt. Thank you.
Bye.